So you want custom football boots just like the pros. Well, unfortunately you can't have them, sort of. Let me explain. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com bringing you a video today not just to discuss but also to show you some custom football boots made specifically for pro players. If you regularly watch this channel, then you probably already knew that a lot of pros, especially very big names, do get custom made boots. But what exactly is custom? What gets changed? And what modifications can they make exactly? Well, I'm going to be discussing all of that in today's video, and we're going to take a look at an actual customized pair that I have here in the form of a Nike Mercurial Superfly 5. You might recognize the upper, but the sole plate is not the normal sole plate. In fact, this is a sole plate pulled from a Nike Mercurial Vapor 6. If you guys do end up enjoying the video, don't forget to support it with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on future videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. What I'm holding in my hands is two different variations of the Motion Blur Pack colorway of the Nike Mercurial Superfly 5. The retail variation and the pro stock variation. The retail version is what we're all familiar with: full fly-knit upper, mid-cut DF collar, and of course the anatomic shaped sole plate that's available with a firm ground or a soft ground pro stud pattern, which is what we saw 99.9% of pros wearing the Superfly 5. This is a pro stock variation of the Superfly 5, which features the standard fly-knit upper with the mid-cut design, but a completely different sole plate that's made out of glass fiber pulled directly from the Mercurial Vapor 6. At least that's when we originally saw this particular design. This is the Mercurial Vapor 6. It came out in 2010, 6 years before the Superfly 5 even existed. So you might be wondering, why take a sole plate from 6 years ago and put it on the latest generation of Superfly? Not the latest anymore, but you get what I'm saying. Well, the answer to that question is because Nike can do it, and obviously somebody wanted it done, so they made it happen. What a lot of people don't understand about the boots that pros wear is that most pros, especially the really big names, sign boot contracts with a specific brand, where that brand is paying them to wear their products. And typically, when the brand is doing that, they're going to be as accommodating as possible to provide you with boots that you are comfortable wearing. This is why we've seen boot drama with Neymar fairly recently, where he was wearing hypervenoms that were technically just vapors dressed up to look like hypervenoms because that's what he was most comfortable wearing. They will accommodate their pros. That's a little bit of an extreme situation, but I guess another good example would be Cristiano Ronaldo with the lowered collar that he wore on the Superfly 4 and the Superfly 5. He doesn't seem to have that issue anymore because they have physically lowered the collar on the Superfly 6. But those are two examples of big name pros getting custom modifications made just for them. Now, with that information, you're probably wondering, whose boots am I holding in my hands? And the answer to that question is nobody's. These are just pro stock. Let me explain. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of pro players across the world, and not everyone is a Messi or a Neymar or a Cristiano Ronaldo, where the brands are going to be paying very close attention to them and making sure that they are as happy as possible. However, there are a lot of pros that don't necessarily have major endorsement deals. Perhaps they're getting a little bit of money to wear a specific brand, at which point Nike does have to provide a product for them. In this case, a Nike Mercurial Superfly 5, but they do offer some variations specific to pros. So this is basically a pro stock version of the Superfly 5, where essentially a specific player or even a team possibly makes an order to Nike to make a Superfly 5 with this specific sole plate. Now, can they put any sole plate on any boot? Theoretically, I assume they could. There has to be some custom element to the manufacturing process in order to make this happen, but I would assume that there is enough demand for this specific sole plate with this 6-stud layout for Nike to actually make it a thing for pros to get. So essentially what would happen is that this isn't necessarily a custom-made boot for one specific player, but more so a custom variation of the Superfly 5 for a lot of smaller name players to pick out if that's what they really want over something that's closer to the retail variation of this exact boot. Aside from sole plate preference, the other reason why they might have used this sole plate on a Superfly 5, which seems weird, is because of the stud pattern itself. This is a standard 6-stud layout rather than the typical mixed sole that we do see a lot of pro players wear. In fact, I would say most players these days wear the mixed sole layout, but some obviously still prefer the 6-stud. this is what a mixed sole would look like, where you still have the screw-in 6 studs. The positioning is a little bit different, but you have the plastic studs in between. But of course, in order to have this mixed sole layout or a standard 6 stud, you actually have to have the plastic molding on top of the sole plate base in order to make that happen. And of course, the sole plate used on the regular Superfly 5, that anatomically shaped sole, there's only a firm ground mold and a mixed sole soft ground mold, no standard 6 stud. This was the last 6 stud layout on a Mercurial sole plate that Nike has ever produced. So obviously they kept the sole plate in production specifically for pro players who only want a 6 stud layout. You might also be wondering who has actually worn this particular variation of the Superfly 5. And I didn't really look that hard for specific examples, but moving on to the current generation Superfly 6, we can actually see Joe Hart wearing the Superfly 6 upper with this exact sole plate and the 6 stud layout. Obviously the Superfly 6 is something that does have a split sole. We have seen certain pros wear the solid anti-clog sole plate in the soft ground pro variation, and we've also seen soft ground pro variations like what Cristiano Ronaldo wears, where it's a custom split sole with the standard mixed sole soft ground layout, something that is not available to the public. But if you look at these pictures of Joe Hart wearing the current Superfly 6, it has this exact sole plate with the 6 stud layout, which again, I think reinforces why this sole plate still exists and why Nike puts it on certain models. It's the last Mercurial stud pattern to feature a 6 stud layout. So for pros that still want the 6 stud rather than the mixed sole soft ground, which seems extremely picky to me, they do have this option and Nike makes it happen for them. You might also be wondering, how did I get my hands on some pro stock Superfly 5s that are completely unused? Well, here's basically what would happen. Nike produces X amount of pro stock variations of the Superfly 5, but they only ship out so many to clubs that need them for players that need them. So they have some leftover old stock. What do they do with that old stock? Typically, they'll do one of two things. One is they'll sell them to a department store and they'll end up at your local Marshalls for 25 bucks or some ridiculous price, or they'll sell them to an online retailer who will buy them for very cheap and also sell them at an extremely low discounted price, which gives us, the public, the option to get some of these pro stock boots. So it's not necessarily rare, it's not really a valuable product, but it is something that's pretty cool, especially if you're a collector, or if you're just a fan of the Superfly 5 and you happen to need a 6 stud soft ground stud pattern, you can absolutely wear these and basically say that you have pro issued boots, which is kind of cool. And that concludes my brief explanation of how pro stock football boots work. If you guys did enjoy the video, don't forget to support it with a like. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching.